I am standing by with the esteemed trainer of Canelo Alvarez, Eddy Reynoso. Eddy, thank you so much for your time. Tell us, how is Saul feeling as he heads into his fight against Caleb Plant? ¿Cómo Saul siente para pelear contra Caleb Plant el 6 de noviembre?
Buenos días a todos los que nos están viendo. Pues muy bien, estamos muy motivados, ya casi listos. La verdad estamos muy emocionados por esta pelea, que ya se llegue, y nos preparamos bastante bien para ganar la pelea.
You said we are very focused, very emotional as we head closer to this fight. We're anxious, but in a good way, as we head towards November 6th. Is there genuine bad blood between Canelo and Caleb Plant? ¿Hay sangre mala contra Canelo y Caleb Plant?
No, nosotros no tenemos sangre mala. Lo único que queremos es ganar la pelea, seguir haciendo historia, seguir avanzando en el boxeo y dejar un nombre importante para todos los mexicanos aquí en Estados Unidos.
You said, no, there is no bad blood. We're just focused on making history. And at the end of the day, we want to be able to continue to build the name so that all Mexicans around the world can go ahead and galvanize behind Canelo Alvarez. What do you think is the key to victory on November 6th against Caleb Plant? ¿Qué sientas que es la llave de la victoria contra Caleb Plant?
Pues la llave de la victoria es presionar, salir desde el primer round a buscar conectar a Caleb Plant. Es un boxeador que tiene mucha técnica, tiene mucha habilidad de piernas, tiene muy buen manejo de distancia, pero vamos a hacer todo lo que hemos estado haciendo en el gimnasio, y más que nada la experiencia y la fortaleza de Saúl son las que van a ser la clave para ganar.
I think that the experience and the heart that Saul has is going to be our key to victory. But at the end of the day, from the first round on, we got to go out and find him. Caleb Plant is a very good technical fighter. He has good legs. He has a high ring IQ. But our focus is we have to pressure him from the start of the fight moving onward. What would this victory to unify this division mean to Canelo and your entire team? Si Canelo va a ganar la pelea contra Caleb Plant, haciendo la historia, ganando los 4 títulos aquí en 168 libras, ¿qué es la significa para Saúl y para ti y este gimnasio?
Creo que es lo más importante que vamos a conseguir ganando esa pelea. Creo que Saúl quedaría en un lugar que sería muy complicado que lo igualaran, y más que nada dejar en claro que el boxeo de México es el mejor, y ganando esa pelea creo que vamos a dejar el boxeo mexicano en un lugar muy especial, más de lo que ya está.
You said our focus is to make sure that we show everyone that Mexican boxing is number one, and we feel that if we're able to get this victory and unify the division, that we can go ahead and put our mark and really show the world that Mexican boxing is number one. Have you thought about the emotions, in terms of if you're able to win this fight, how would you feel, knowing that you guys accomplished all 4 belts? And is this the most important fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez? ¿Esto es la más importante pelea en la carrera de Canelo Alvarez?
Sí, es la más importante. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos jugando todo el prestigio de un boxeador. Lo más grande que pueda conseguir un boxeador es ser un campeón indiscutible, un campeón que tenga todos los cinturones, y creo que esa es la pelea más importante, y por eso nos hemos preparado bastante bien para salir con la mano en alto.
This is the most important fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez, because the goal is to win all 4 belts. And as a prize fighter, there is nothing bigger than unifying a division. That's why we've been working so hard. So yes, if we're able to win this fight, and as we prepare for this fight, that's why we've been preparing so hard for Caleb Plant to unify the division. Final question, última pregunta. What do you want to tell Caleb Plant? ¿Qué la mensaje que tienes para Caleb Plant?
Que le vamos a ganar. Ese es el único mensaje. No tengo nada que decir, solamente que nosotros vamos a ganar la pelea.
Said, I have really nothing to say. The only thing I could tell him is we're going to win the fight on November 6th. Eddy, mucho gusto. Gracias.
Gracias a ustedes.
Eddy Reynoso joining us here, guys. And Eddy, the fact that Brian and Luke, that Eddy told us that this is the most significant fight in the career of Canelo Alvarez, with the fights against Floyd, with the fights that he's had, the illustrious fights, I think that speaks volumes as to how significant November 6th on Showtime pay-per-view truly is for Canelo.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Ray. We'll be back with you a little bit later. For right now, to answer the question and to make a point here, Brian, Ray is right. For Eddy Reynoso to say that, I mean, partly, yeah, they're promoting a fight. They want folks to tune in. I get that. But at the same time, with the fiery intensity, with the press conference, with the fact that no one in boxing has fully undisputed, unified all four belts at 168 pounds, if Canelo does, he'd be the first. And again, being the bigger puncher in this weight class, which has been utterly phenomenal to watch. Brian, I don't think it's necessarily hyperbole to say, even from a sort of the understandably but myopic view that coaches might have and fighters as well, that this is the biggest fight. Is it promotionally on the same par of bringing in what Mayweather brings? I don't think Caleb Plant necessarily brings that, but it's a huge fight, number one, and secondly, the overall history implications, I should say, they are quite significant.
Yeah, look, anytime you get history, bad blood, and a really interesting style matchup involved on a very large platform, it's going to feel big. It's going to matter. I think also that's another part of Canelo's consistent success, and to be on top of this sport for so long, to immediately, when we transitioned out of the Mayweather-Pacquiao era, so to speak, of this sport, Canelo was ready, willing, and able to take that baton instantly and make this era his own. And I think a big part of that is making every fight matter on this level to him. It just so happened this time it got a little bit personal, and that helped. But look, you see Eddy Reynoso right there. You and I can't say enough, as most of the boxing public, great things about who he's become as trainer and co-manager of Alvarez, and how he's helped this really incredible evolution from being more of a plodding counter-puncher at 154 pounds to being, as we talked about, a complete fighter now who can beat you anyway. And what's crazy, especially when you and I look back at some of his recent big fights at 168 or 175 pounds, how Canelo has adapted to become the stalker in some of these matchups. How he did that against a supposedly bigger puncher in Sergey Kovalev blows me away. A lot of that is the brain trust of Eddy Reynoso, who not only has been getting the big name attention with Canelo, but now with Oscar Valdez, with Ryan Garcia, with Andy Ruiz Jr. It's hard to just go out on a limb and say this guy's the best trainer in boxing, but he's certainly the hottest trainer and the trainer of the moment. Luke, what do you sort of get from him, whether it's technique, style, or even demeanor, that you think makes this a perfect marriage for Canelo?
Yeah, well, one is, you use the right word, marriage. I mean, you and I know this from covering the sports for combat sports for so long, which is that the best kind of fighters typically have not just great coaches, but really meaningful, impactful, often lasting relationships with those coaches, right? Sometimes you can get a situation where a Tyson Fury can leave Ben Davison and go the whole Kronk direction, change up things, and get an even more dominant win. That does happen. But what you more commonly see is, among the very, very best, I should say, are situations like this, where they connect and then they just stick together for a pretty long time. Sometimes a matter of 5 to 10 years. Sometimes the entirety of the fighter's professional relationship. So one is they've got a great bond, and I don't mean that in some kind of flippant or almost irrelevant way. When you've got a good bond like that, that means you have trust in your coach. That means the coach has trust in the fighter. It means if things get bad, he will listen to the coach. It means that they probably are on the same wavelength in terms of game planning. And I think that some of the additional skills that Canelo has picked up, it's hard to know exactly what to attribute to Eddy Reynoso, but I'll just say in the last few years, what I've seen is one, that stalking you're talking about. I think Eddy discovered this guy. He's like, dude, if you can punch like this, why are you doing it backing up? The big part is putting opponents on their heels. They fight differently, especially if you're going to go up weight classes and they have bigger reach. Getting them along the rope line is absolutely a key component of any kind of success, especially if you can punch with them. And I think more than that, dude, we talked about this a lot. I think Canelo is one of the better guys in the entire sport of turning offense into defense and defense into offense. They just weave together, where he's not fighting offensively at times and then defensively at times. He might have some kind of orientation one direction or the other, depending on the round or the moment. But in general, he's able to just weave them together. Even in the moment, for example, in the last fight, when he broke the face of Billy Joe Saunders, this was a portion of the fight, at least in the rounds or two previous to that point, that Billy Joe was kind of having a little bit of momentum. If you scored the fight, you scored it for Billy Joe closer to that moment, the rounds that preceded it. But he's able, even when the opponent tactically changes, he can make the adjustments. When he's put on the back foot, he can still fight. And then when he obviously wants to move forward, he can. To me, a big reason why he's able to do that is because he doesn't necessarily have to worry about what gear he's in. He can kind of flow between the states pretty easily. And I think it's obviously a testament to the hard work and skill of a guy like Canelo Alvarez, but it also seems to me the molding from Eddy Reynoso, Brian. You just, I don't know, can you really say you get this version of him, well, Canelo, without Eddy being in his life as long as he has? I'm skeptical of that.
And that's why it's hard to sort of break down the percentages of what comes from the fighter and his own skills and knowledge and growth and what is, due to the coaching, because he's been with the Reynosos, not just Eddy, but his father, Jose Chepo Reynoso, as not just, trainers from his amateur days, but father and brotherly figures to him as they've, traveled the world on this boxing journey. So just a remarkable career. It's funny. I mean, Canelo's just 31 years old, but because he turned pro as a teenager and because we've seen him on top for so long, it could either go both ways. You can be like, wow, he's been around forever, or you start not to necessarily think of him as a veteran in the, entering the second half of his prime, but that's certainly where we're at. Titles across 4 divisions, just a remarkable journey to get here, and that's due to that consistency, that work ethic. I mean, Luke, you've seen the sort of marketing look from Canelo with the boxing is no boxing, no life. Boxing is life. And, on one hand, you can sort of heckle the simplicity of that, but, he's an old school Spartan. He lives this thing. And that's a great deal of why he's had this success. I just cannot believe, and I don't think there's enough times we can say it, Luke, him making the jump from 154 to middleweight, to super middleweight, to light heavyweight, and to carry his power, speed, and be the more dangerous fighter every single time. I mean, there's a little bit of comparison in that to what Manny Pacquiao did in rising up in weight. Only the very true special ones can sort of act as if weight is nothing more than, a number you hit on the scale. They're the same fighter regardless.
Let's go back to Ray Flores in San Diego, who is standing by with Canelo's strength and conditioning coach.
Thank you very much, Luke and Brian. We are here with Munir Samoya. Munir, thank you very much for joining us. Tell us, how, in your opinion, how is Canelo looking? ¿Cómo se ve Canelo? Estamos preparando para el 6 de noviembre contra Caleb Plant.
Pues la verdad se ve en forma, se ve fuerte, su condición, todo se ve al 100, la verdad.
He looks in form, he looks fit, and his conditioning is second to none. Have you been doing anything different as you guys prepare Canelo for Caleb Plant? ¿Están haciendo algo diferente con Canelo? ¿Están preparando contra Caleb Plant porque Caleb Plant es muy atlético en el cuadrilátero? Caleb Plant's very athletic in the ring?
Sí, fíjate, bueno, yo me baso a lo que Eddy ve en Caleb Plant y me dice la forma en cómo trabajarlo ahí en los ejercicios de acondicionamiento, por ejemplo. Quiere un poquito de rapidez, quiere explosividad, fuerza y todo eso.
Yeah, so what happens is Eddy lets me know what he sees in Caleb Plant, and then I alter my workouts for Canelo to prepare for Caleb Plant. So I know we've been working on getting quicker, on being more explosive. So that has been the focus from a strength and conditioning standpoint. At the age of 31 years of age, do you think that Canelo is getting better physically, because he seems to be in incredible physical shape? ¿Sientes que Canelo en 31 años que está haciendo más mejor con el físico, en la condición de él, peleando contra oponentes como Caleb Plant?
Sí, claro, se ha visto más fuerte. Si vieron pues con la pelea de Callum Smith, de Billy Joe Saunders, se ha visto que está fuerte, es más inteligente, obviamente no desperdicia golpe. Y él se siente más confiado también por el poder que tiene.
Yeah, so Canelo is stronger, he's faster, and he has a lot more confidence when he throws his punches. Also, he doesn't waste much motion. In your eyes, how do you see the fight playing out on November 6th? ¿Cómo sientas que la pelea va a estar contra Canelo y Caleb Plant? ¿Tu predicción para la pelea?
Pues nosotros como equipo sabemos cómo es Saúl, Obviamente estamos confiados porque sabemos de su capacidad. Entonces, la verdad estamos tranquilos, esperando ya el 6 de noviembre.
He goes, we're relaxed. You know, we're totally confident. We know what Canelo can do, and we're just awaiting November 6th. But you don't have a prediction. No tienes una predicción porque Canelo has said that he believes he will be able to finish off Caleb Plant in 8 rounds or less. Canelo está diciendo que él se va a terminar a Caleb Plant en 8 asaltos o menos. ¿Sientes que eso va a ser la realidad en el 6 de noviembre?
Pues con Saúl todo es impredecible, ¿no? Igual yo creo que lo va a terminar más o menos como el 7º, 8º round, así es.
Yeah, I think he will. I think Canelo will finish off Caleb Plant or the 7th and 8th round. And look, you know, Canelo is very confident, and when he makes his predictions, and you know, likely they come true. So I believe that is the case. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you guys as we head towards fight week.
Thank you so much.
Guys, the strength and conditioning coach at Canelo Alvarez saying yes, he's working on being quicker, faster, more explosive, and you see indications of that inside the ring as we are here for his workout here in San Diego.
Adelante. Eso ahí. Y suéltale. Así, ahí. Ahí. Ahí está. Ahí está. Ahí está. Dobles ahí. Dobles. Vivo ahí. Ahí está. Y salte. Muévase ahí. Eso, dale vuelta. Ahora ya veo. Salía. Combinaciones de 5, vivo ahí. Ahí va. Ahí va. Ahí va. Camínale, camínale, güey. ¿Quieres agua? Sí, por favor.
Luke Thomas, Brian Campbell here. We're the hosts of Morning Combat. You can check us out at youtube.com/Morning Combat. But today we are here for the Canelo Alvarez workout. And as you can see, here he is with the Fanoodles, basically, with trainer Eddy Reynoso working in the ring. BC?
Look,
It's amazing. One quick thing, if I may, BC. It's kind of amazing that not that he's exactly working super hard, but he hasn't even broken a sweat wearing 2 shirts, jumping rope, and now practicing with trainer Eddy Reynoso. Kind of remarkable, actually.
Yeah, this is light work for the cameras. Get your pictures. Looking good, looking good. One thing, though, Luke, you always wonder if you can pull a little tidbit out of what we're seeing Canelo go to the southpaw stance in his warm-ups a little bit, something you don't typically see from him in the ring, always in that orthodox stance. He was going from southpaw, practicing his body work, switching up his footwork. Will we see that against Caleb Plant? It's hard to know. But one thing I did want to take away, I thought, was prescient from that interview with the strength and conditioning coach, is he really identified to Ray how efficient Canelo is. And, Luke, that is just such a true sign of how elite he is. When he can be the bigger puncher in these fights or the counter puncher like he was more of in his junior middleweight reign, yet his CompuBox stats and the percentages still being so high. Canelo doesn't waste punches, so he's a hard fighter to counter against because he doesn't put himself in bad positions. And I think even more, Luke, on the standpoint of not wasting punches, remember what he did against unbeaten Callum Smith to unify super middleweight titles? Smith was working behind that high guard, willing to sit on the rope slot to try to buy time. Canelo didn't have, let's say, a pure target, so he just started pounding away at the arms, ended up dislocating the left bicep of Smith during that fight, which essentially took away his hook and jab. Really just next level thinking for Canelo, but really making great use of what he has. When is the last time you see Canelo out of position, off balance? It just doesn't happen.
No, it's a great point. And one thing I sort of wanted to bring up, and you can understand it in strength and conditioning terms as well as technical terms, which is, for example, we can't really tell here because he has a shirt on, but by the time fight time comes, you'll see, like, compared to his fights at 154, his muscle mass is going to be significantly greater, and there's going to be some key reasons for that. Obviously, he's up in weight. That's going to be the biggest one. But he's older. He doesn't get out of shape. I mean, look at the statement in the middle of the ring, no boxing, no life. I'm not saying he's always in camp, but he always lives a life that makes it so that he can gear up for camp quite easily. And you do that for year after year after year, and you begin to build on an existing base of athletic essentially muscle tissue and muscular mind connection and all of the motor patterns that he's learned. He can build on that, so by the time he gets to the stage in his career, everything, to your point, BC, very efficient. That's you're speaking more about boxing skills, but all of it is related. And also with boxing skills, BC, we talked about how he can do sort of all of it. He's got strengths, he's got weaknesses. He's not the perfect fighter, no fighter is. But again, if you start young and you really begin to live this life in a sort of monastic way, which at times I think Canelo Alvarez has, at each stage of your life as you get older, think of it in 5-year increments, 15 to 20, 20 to 25, and so forth, you begin to build on that skill to the point where you have this deep reservoir of things you can go to depending on the opponent. Everything is in your toolbox. Let's bring in Ray here. Ray Flores, who of course is in San Diego and is ringside. What's going on, Ray? What do you see?
Well, what I see is that Canelo is just all about business. I mean, he's going and getting the proper work necessary. But the point that I want to bring up to you guys is when we were talking, before I talked with Eddy Reynoso about, of where Canelo's legacy is when it comes to Mexican fighters. To me, what I am seeing out of Canelo that we typically don't see out of Mexican prize fighters is his ability to use feints and